My family disowned me for marrying a poor man. Now my golden child sister is marrying a scammer who stole $80,000. They come begging for my help, but I gave them a lesson they'll never forget. I'm 32 years old. I work in digital marketing, and I've been married to the love of my life for 5 years. And honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened last week left me with a mix of feelings that I'm still processing. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I was a kid and grew up in one of those families where everyone thought we had the perfect life because we had money, the big house in the nice neighborhood, the imported cars, the trips to Europe every year, all that stuff. My parents, Catherine and William, were what you could call well-off people, but not millionaires. Let's say my father had his own business and it was doing very well, and my mother basically dedicated herself to keeping up appearances and making sure everyone knew we were an upper-class family. The thing is, I never fit well into that world. I mean, don't get me wrong, I liked having my things and we didn't go without or anything like that. But I was always bothered by my family's obsession, especially my mother's, with social status and what people would say. My mother came from a middle-class family. I think that marked her a lot because her whole life was like a personal mission to prove that she had moved up socially. You know what I mean? She was always comparing us to other families, always worried about whether our neighbors had a newer car or if so-and-so had managed to marry someone richer. I remember as a kid she would tell me things like, "You have to hang out with the right girls, Sarah, the ones who come from good families." And when I asked what that meant, she would answer, families with money and education. My father was a bit less intense about all that, honestly. But he still went along with it because, I don't know. I guess he wanted to keep the peace at home. My sister Jessica is 4 years younger than me. She's 28 now. And from when she was little, she was like the princess of the family, literally. My parents, especially my mother, spoiled her in a way that even today seems incredible to me. When Jessica wanted something, she got it. Didn't matter what it was or how much it cost. I remember when she was 16, she wanted a BMW for her birthday and my parents bought it for her, like they didn't even question it. I had asked for a used car when I turned 16 and they told me I had to work to pay for it. I mean, the rules were completely different for her. And it's not that I was jealous exactly, more like it frustrated me to see how they were spoiling her, because Jessica grew up with this attitude that the world owed her everything and that people without money were inferior, basically. I tried to talk to my parents about this several times, but they always told me I was the older sister, and that I had to be more understanding with Jessica. Fast forward to when I was like 24 years old. I was working at my first decent job at an advertising agency. Nothing glamorous, but I liked it, and I was earning my own money. It was at a business conference where I met David. And honestly, it was like one of those moments where, something important is happening, He worked as a salesman for a software company, came from a working-class family. His parents were public school teachers, and he had paid for his own college, working full-time while studying. What attracted me to him from the beginning was that he was genuine, like he asked me questions about me as a person, about my dreams and my ideas, not about what family I came from or where I studied or what car I drove. We dated for 3 months before I introduced him to my parents, because I already knew it was going to be a disaster, and boy was it. The first time David came to dinner at my parents' house, I can say without exaggerating that it was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my life. My mother bombarded him with questions about his family, his job, his income, all in a super obvious and rude way. I remember at one point she asked, "And what do your parents do, David?" And when he said they were teachers, my mother's face literally changed. Like she put on that fake smile she uses when she's judging someone but trying to hide it. Jessica, who was like 20 years old back then, didn't even bother to hide it. She spent the whole dinner looking at her phone and making passive-aggressive comments about people who settled for little in life. My father was a bit more polite, but I could still see he was evaluating David as if he were a bad investment, calculating whether he was good enough for his daughter or something like that. After that dinner, my mother called me literally the next day and said, "Sarah, we need to talk about David." And I already knew what was coming. She told me he seemed like a good guy, but that he clearly wasn't on our level, that I could aspire to much more, that there were many successful men from good families who would be interested in me. I told her I loved David, and that I didn't care where he came from or how much money he had. And she basically told me I was being immature and that someday I would understand that love wasn't enough to sustain a marriage. The thing is, that conversation repeated itself like 1,000 times over the next few months. My family started inviting me to social events, where coincidentally, there was always some successful bachelor that my mother wanted me to meet, like sons of her friends or my father's business partners. It was obvious what they were doing, and it made me furious. Jessica was even worse. Honestly. Every time I mentioned David, she made comments like, "Oh, Sarah, I can't believe you're still with that little salesman," or she would tell me things like, "I hope when you get married you don't expect us to go to your wedding if you're going to live in a tiny apartment in an ugly neighborhood." One day, I exploded and told her she was a superficial and materialistic person and that I felt sorry that she couldn't see people's value beyond their bank account. We fought horribly. She ran to my mom, and obviously my mom scolded me for being rude to my little sister. It was like living in a cheap soap opera. But it was my real life. David and I stayed together because the truth is he was, and is, the best person I know. Despite how my family treated him, he was never rude to them. He was always respectful and kind, which honestly made him look better and them look worse. After 3 years of being together, David proposed to me. He took me to this park where we had our first date and asked me to marry him. And I said yes, without thinking for even a second. I was happy, excited, feeling like my life was taking the right path, and then came the horrible part. I told my parents that David and I were going to get married, and my mother literally started crying. But not from happiness, obviously, but like crying from disappointment and drama. My father stayed quiet for a long while and then said, "Sarah, if you're really going to do this, there are conditions." I asked him what conditions, and he explained that they wanted David to sign a prenuptial agreement, where it would basically be clear that he had no right to any of my family inheritance or anything I had before the marriage or received from my family after. The way he said it was so cold and calculated, like he was negotiating a business contract and not talking about his daughter's marriage. I told him that was unnecessary because David wasn't with me for money, that he had never shown any interest in my family's wealth. But my father insisted and said, "If he doesn't sign the prenup, then we can't support this marriage and we won't go to the wedding." My mother added that if I chose David over my family, then I would have to live with the consequences of that decision, which sounded very dramatic and threatening. Jessica was there during this whole conversation, laughing and saying things like, "I told you, Sarah, but you didn't want to listen to me. Now you're going to be an embarrassment to the family." That night I talked to David about everything that had happened and told him my parents wanted a prenup. He surprised me because he said he had no problem signing whatever was necessary, if that gave me peace, that he wasn't with me for my family or for money, and that he would happily sign any paper that proved that. But I was furious. I mean, it wasn't about the prenup itself. It was about what it represented. About the fact that my family thought so little of him and of me. It was like they were saying I didn't have the capacity to choose well, or that any man who loved me had to have hidden motives if he wasn't rich. So I made a decision that completely changed my life. I called my parents and told them that David and I were going to get married with or without their blessing, that there wasn't going to be a prenup because it was ridiculous and insulting, and that if they couldn't support me, then they simply shouldn't come to my wedding. My mother started screaming on the phone, saying I was making the biggest mistake of my life, that I was going to regret it, that I was being manipulated by a gold digger. My father was calmer but still said that if that was my decision, then I would have to accept that I was cutting ties with my family. I told him perfect, that if those were the ties I had with my family, then I didn't need them. Jessica sent me like 50 messages after that call, all saying basically the same thing, that I was an idiot, that I was destroying my family, that David wasn't worth it, that I was going to end up poor and miserable. I blocked her number after message number 30-something, because I couldn't take it anymore. My parents tried to contact me several times during the following weeks, but I didn't respond. Some relatives and family friends also called me, trying to convince me to reconsider, to talk to my parents, to reach a compromise. But I had already made my decision. David and I got married 6 months later in a small and beautiful ceremony with our close friends and David's family, who, by the way, welcomed me with open arms from the beginning. His parents are some of the warmest and most genuine people I know. Literally the day I met them, David's mom hugged me and told me, "Welcome to the family, Sarah. We're happy that you make our son happy." It was so different from how my family treated David that I almost started crying right there. Our wedding wasn't luxurious or ostentatious. Honestly, we spent like what my parents would have spent just on flowers for a big wedding. But it was perfect because it was full of people who genuinely loved us and supported us. The first years of marriage were incredible. Honestly, David and I worked hard. We rented a modest but nice apartment. We bought IKEA furniture and assembled it together, laughing when we didn't understand the instructions. We cooked together on weekends. We made plans for our future. He continued growing in his career and eventually got a better paying position. I was also advancing in my work, and after 3 years, I decided to go independent and start my own boutique marketing agency that started doing pretty well. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable and we were happy, which to me was the most important thing. During these 5 years, I had absolutely no contact with my parents or with Jessica. Zero. Not birthday messages, not calls at Christmas, nothing. At first, it was hard. I'm not going to lie. There were moments where I missed my family despite everything, where I wondered if I had done the right thing, if I had been too drastic. But David always supported me and reminded me that I had chosen to respect myself and our relationship, and that wasn't wrong. Over time, the pain became less intense, and honestly, I reached a point where I was at peace with my decision. I built my own family with David and with his parents, who basically adopted me as a daughter. Literally a week ago, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to answer. It was my mother, Catherine. I hadn't heard her voice in 5 years, and honestly, I was paralyzed for a second. She started by saying, "Sarah, it's me, your mother. I need to talk to you. It's important." I asked her what she wanted after 5 years of silence, and she said, "It's about your sister. She's in trouble and we need your help." I started laughing, like an ironic laugh, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her, "Are you calling me after 5 years because you need something from me?" "Really?" My mother sighed and started explaining to me that Jessica had been dating a man named Trevor for 2 years, who came from a very wealthy family, and at first everything seemed perfect. But it turns out this Trevor has serious gambling and alcohol addiction problems. Like, he had already lost like $200,000 of his own money in casinos and online betting. Jessica apparently was head over heels for him because he was rich and handsome, and all her friends envied her relationship, so she ignored all the warning signs. Things got worse when Trevor started asking Jessica to lend him money to cover his gambling debts, and Jessica, since she's never worked a day in her life and has always depended on my parents, I started asking them for more and more money without telling them what it was for. My mother told me all this with like a desperate voice, and I asked her, "And what does this have to do with me?" She said that Trevor was now pressuring Jessica to get married, and that my parents were terrified because they knew that if they got married, he was going to financially destroy Jessica and probably try to get money from the whole BDRIY family. She told me they had tried to talk to Jessica, but that she wouldn't listen to them, that she was completely blinded by this guy, and that they thought maybe I could talk to her, make her see reason, because Jessica had always admired me when we were younger. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told my mother, "Let me see if I understand correctly. You threw me out of the family 5 years ago because I was going to marry a hardworking and honest man who wasn't rich enough for you. And now you want me to help Jessica, who is literally about to marry a gambling addict who only wants her money? And you expect me to come running to rescue her?" My mother started saying it was different, that Trevor came from a good family, that he just had some problems he could overcome. And I interrupted her and told her, "No, Catherine, it's not different. It's exactly the same, except now it's your favorite daughter who's in trouble and suddenly you care." I told her the answer was no, that I wasn't going to help, that Jessica was an adult, and that she would have to deal with the consequences of her own decisions, just like I had to deal with mine. My mother started begging, literally begging, saying that Jessica was my sister and that family had to help each other. I told her that she herself had told me 5 years ago that if I chose David over my family, I would have to live with the consequences, and that now Jessica would have to live with the consequences of choosing Trevor. I hung up the phone and I was shaking because I hadn't felt that much rage in years. 2 days later, I received a call from my father, William. He was a bit more humble than my mother. He started by saying he knew he had hurt me, and that maybe they had been too hard on me. He explained that the situation with Trevor was worse than my mother had told me, that not only had he lost his own money, but he had started taking out loans using Jessica's name as collateral, and that my parents had already had to pay like $80,000 in Trevor's debts to avoid Jessica having legal problems. He told me they were losing money fast, and that they were afraid of ending up in financial ruin if this continued. I asked him why they didn't just cut off Jessica's money, why they kept paying for her mistakes. My father said they had tried, but that Jessica threatened to cut off all contact with them if they didn't help her, that she said if they didn't support her with Trevor, then she would leave their lives forever. I laughed again, like the irony was too obvious. I told my father, Then do it, William. Cut off Jessica's money just like you cut me off. Let her go. Tell her that if she chooses Trevor over her family, then she'll have to live with the consequences of that decision. Use exactly the same words you used with me. My father was quiet for a long while, and then said it wasn't the same. That I had chosen well, and it turned out David was a good man, but that Jessica was clearly choosing wrong and needed to be protected from herself. I told him he hadn't trusted my judgment 5 years ago either, that he had assumed David was a gold digger without giving him a real chance, and that now he had to trust Jessica's judgment in the same way, for better or worse. I told him the difference was that he had been willing to lose me, but wasn't willing to lose Jessica. And that said everything I needed to know about my place in the family. I told him I already had my own family now, that I was happy, and that I wasn't going to get involved in this drama. Yesterday, literally yesterday, I received a furious call from my mother. She was screaming so much, I had to hold the phone away from my ear. She told me I was an ungrateful, selfish, vindictive daughter. How could I turn my back on my family when they needed me most? That she had given me everything when I was a child, and that now I was denying her help when she needed it. I told her that she had taught me that love in this family was conditional, that it depended on doing what she wanted and choosing who she approved of. That she had taught me that if your children don't follow your rules, then you cut them out of your life. And that I was simply following the lessons she had taught me. My mother started crying and saying that I was going to cause Jessica to ruin her life, that I was going to carry that guilt forever. I told her that Jessica was a 8-year-old adult and that her decisions were hers, not mine. That if my parents wanted to help her, that was their choice, but that I wasn't going to be part of it. That I had spent 5 years building a happy life without them, and that I wasn't going to let them destroy my peace. I told her not to call me again and hung up. I blocked both my parents' numbers and also Jessica's just in case. Last night I was sitting on the couch with David watching a movie and suddenly I started crying, like for no apparent reason. David hugged me and asked me what was wrong, and I told him I didn't know, that it was a mix of everything. Sadness for the family I never had. Anger at how they treated me. Relief that they're no longer part of my life. And also like a strange validation that I had made the right decision. 5 years ago. David told me he was proud of me, that I had defended our relationship and our values, and that I shouldn't regret establishing healthy boundaries with toxic people, even if those people were my blood family. The truth is, I don't know what's going to happen with Jessica and Trevor. Part of me feels sorry for her because I know she was raised to value the wrong things, but another part of me thinks she's an adult and she needs to learn that actions have consequences. My parents will probably keep bailing her out until they literally can't anymore, and maybe that will end up being the lesson she needs. Or maybe not. I don't know. What I do know is that it's not my responsibility to save her, especially when my own family wasn't willing to give me the benefit of the doubt when I made probably the best decision of my life. 2 days ago, David and I were having dinner with his parents, and his mom asked me how I was. If I was okay after all the drama with my parents, I told her the truth, that it was complicated, but I was fine, that I was where I needed to be. She took my hand and told me, "You know, Sarah, family isn't just the people who share your blood. It's the people who love you unconditionally and who are there for you through thick and thin." And looking around that table, seeing David and his parents who have treated me with more love and respect in 5 years than my own family did in 27, I knew she was right. This is my family now. The one I chose and the one that chose me, and that's more than enough.